Hey all, welcome to ShareTrack. This is Raj here. And friends, today I have a topic that's related to genomics. You may find it to be a bit indirectly related, but it's very important because the legislation that EU is planning to bring for pharma industry is going to affect the valuation of our companies in this in our watch list. So you better watch this video till the end, and please leave your comments behind, especially our viewers from Europe. I'd look forward to your feedback on what you think is going to be the impact of this on pharma industry in Europe. So with that said, I think I would request that if any of you have not yet subscribed and are watching our videos, please subscribe. It's absolutely free. Help us grow this channel. With that said, let's get started. Welcome back, friends. The European Commission is set to release a draft version of its legislative overhaul for the pharma industry. The proposed new legislation is expected to include a compulsory licensing system that would allow the European Commission to manufacture drugs and vaccines during a public health emergency. However, industry groups warn that this could lead to a reduction in research and development investments in the continent. And compulsory licensing is typically used in cases of extreme public health need in countries that lack the means to pay for more expensive brand name drugs, such as HIV or cancer drugs. This shift towards compulsory licenses could go a step further than what the US federal government allows under the Defense Production Act in a state of emergency. The president can direct private companies to prioritize orders from the US. Both the Trump and Biden administration used the DPA or Defense Production Act to fight COVID-19. The new legislation proposed by the European Commission could have significant implication for the pharma industry, while compulsory licensing is designed to provide greater access to life-saving drugs and vaccines during a public health emergency. It could also lead to a reduction in research and development investments on the continent. If companies fear that their intellectual property may not be protected, they may be less likely to invest in new drug development, which could have serious implications for public health in the long run. It is important to note that the legislation is still in its draft stage and may change before its official release on Wednesday. However, the addition of compulsory licensing to the proposed legislation is likely to be a controversial topic in the pharma industry. It remains to be seen how the industry will respond to the proposed changes and what impact that will have on public health in Europe and beyond. The draft proposal for the new pharma legislation by the EU, seen by the Financial Times, suggests that compulsory licensing could provide a solution for the rapid manufacturing of products needed to tackle a crisis. However, to guarantee that such products can be freely circulated within the internal market and reach all those in need, the compulsory licensing shall be granted at EU level. This proposal is likely to be met with a mixed response from the pharma industry, as it could lead to a reduction in the research and development investments in Europe. The draft legislation also proposes reducing the number of years that a new pharmaceutical would be afforded patent protection from 10 years presently to 8 years, unless the drug is marketed in every member state. The provision has already been criticized by Germany, which argues that it could increase the risk of lost investments in Europe in the pharma sector. According to a spokesperson for the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Association, which is also abbreviated as EFPIA, the new legislation proposals in Europe could cut the investment figure in half. To around 38.65 billion euros. The spokesperson further explained that by 2040, China is expected to replace Europe as the number 2 destination in the world for company life science investment, with EU 326 billion invested in R&D in the US at that time, and 99 billion euros in China, and Europe being in the third place with 74 billion euros. The addition of the pharma legislation proposal in Europe could further erode Europe's position as a leading destination for company life science investment. While proposed legislation aims to address issues related to access to life science drugs and vaccines during public health emergencies, it may have unintended consequences for the pharma industry's investment in research and development in Europe. It's important to consider the potential impact of these proposals on public health in the long run, as well as the implication for the pharma industry and the European economy as a whole. Novo Nordisk CEO Lars Jørgensen has also expressed concerns that Europe could lose out to US and Japan for new R&D investments if the rewritten legislation is implemented. This sentiment has been echoed by other industry leaders who fear that the proposed reduction in patent protection and compulsory licensing could result in a decline in the investments in research and development in Europe. However, the revised legislation also aims to reduce European medicines agencies' approved timelines and costs and create new ways to allow EU regulators to be more nimble. For instance, regulators would be able to adapt the terms of marketing or authorizations based on scientific evidence. These changes are expected to reduce administrative burden and encourage accelerated product developments in the European pharmaceutical sectors. The European Commission believes that the revised legislation will have economic benefits for the pharmaceutical sectors in Europe, which will be further enhanced by future-proofing the legislation, providing new opportunities for accelerated product developments. While the pharma industry is concerned about the potential impact of the new legislation, it's important to consider how these changes could benefit the public health and the economy in the long run. As genomic investors, we need to keep track of these developments as it will impact the valuations of the companies as these legislations directly impact the bottom line. So from friends, this is what I have gleaned from everything that I have read about this new legislations. Now I'd like to give you my own opinion on how I look at this. I'll give you an example. If you look at the current approach for the US economy, it has been a trickle-down approach where it is believed that we will give all the incentives and tax breaks to the big guys and capitalists because then they will invest that in companies and the companies will then recruit staff and the staff will get salaries and then they will spend it in the economy. So the benefits are going to trickle down from the top. Now, it assumes that if the benefits are taken away from the high net worth individuals and capitalists, then they will go to some other jurisdiction and take their factories and production with them. Therefore, a trickle-down approach is essential. Now, flip the logic on the other side. Let us say that the government is going to give citizens money on a monthly basis. Let us say it's going to give them $2,000 per head per month. Then what are the people going to do with it? Most of the people, 95% of the people are not very rich. So let us say 50% of the people are less than rich. So they are going to spend it on food, clothing, and shelter. The entire amount of money they get is going to be spent on those things. As a result of which, what's going to happen is that all the earnings is going back into the economy and it's going to stimulate demand. And friends, if there is demand in the economy, won't the capitalists like to put up factories in order to meet those demands? So a bottom-up approach can also be justified in the same way. Now, coming back to the question in our hand about the patent protection, reducing from 10 years to 8 years. The first point is that how do we get to the 10 years in the first place? Why should there be 10 years patent protection? I'm looking at it not only from the point of view of a genomic investor, but also as a sociologist. The amount of incentives and remuneration that pharma CEOs and executives are getting is exorbitant. They are earning more than they can spend, and they are saving a lot of money out of that, and they're investing in various areas. Why should there be more incentive out there? Okay, this is from a sociologist perspective, I'm looking at it. And let us say from 10 years, the patent protection becomes 8 years. The economies will get adjusted. Where are the pharmaceutical companies going to go? Are they going to ignore the European subcontinent? That's not possible. So I don't think this is going to have a very big impact. Of course, as investors, now putting on the genomic investor's hat, I want to have higher valuation of my stock. And therefore, I would like to see a longer patent protection. That is the myth. But in reality, if all companies have got to face the same regulatory regime, the valuations will adjust accordingly. So nobody is going to lose out on anything. It's just a question of, it's just a game of chicken, where the farmers and the big industries are going to dare government by saying that from 10, if you reduce to 8, it's going to be a problem. It's never going to be a problem. Companies always want to manufacture and produce and make profits out of it, and they'll find their own ways of making profits. And the governments are tasked with the responsibility of making sure that the poorest of the people are still able to get medicine, food, clothing, and shelter. And that's the right approach to go. And the current dispensation that we have of democracy is one which is well suited at this point of time for the lack of any other system to provide social justice and also to provide a level playing field for capitalism to be in. Hyper-capitalism or hyper-democracy is going to upset the apple cart. We need a middle balance where there's certain amount of democracy, regulations, and systems in place to ensure social equity, and at the same time there is sufficient amount of capitalism available so that innovation can take place and be suitably rewarded. So in my opinion, I don't think this is going to make any difference unless US doesn't follow suit. And again, friends, if you look at the recent moves that Biden administration made in order to get an agreement among various countries in order to prevent companies from tax shopping to put their headquarters so that they can avoid taxes, I'm looking at that as one of the examples. And if all the governments decided to have the same kind of regulations that EU has got, then there is no issue. All companies will have level playing field. There will be no incentive for anybody to leave any continent. But till then, there will be saber rattling from the industry. And as genomic investors, we have to be level-headed, and we have to see this both from our responsibility as investors towards society and also our responsibility as investors to make sure that we have a reasonable profit. So with that thought, I would like to finish this video. I'd like to know what you guys think about this. And put that in your comment. Especially, I would look forward to hear from our audience from Europe what you guys think about this. That's all for now. I'll be back with the next video soon. If you like this video, please do not hesitate to press a like out there and help us grow this channel. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now.